Well, hi there, and welcome to Side Hustle Hero, the show that is laser focused to inspire you to take action to start or to scale your side hustle income streams. I'm your host, Joan, author of The Way Success Works. The following top 10 tips for side hustle success you can apply any time of the year. But if you happen to be listening to this when the episode drops, Happy New Year! I love January. It provides us a great opportunity to check in with ourselves and consider, what do we want to do with our lives this year and beyond? If you're launching into a goal-setting session over the coming days or weeks, first, start by listing all the successes that you've had in the past 12 months, large and small. That way, you're focusing on what went right, and that's a great mindset from which to dive into your goal setting for the coming year. This episode is dedicated to sharing with you the top tips, essentials really, of side hustle success. These are derived from my well over 30 years of experience in the personal development space and the insights that I've gleaned from our side hustle heroes. As we start to dive into this, consider your why. Why are you starting or running a side hustle anyway? The reason tends to fall into one of three categories. First and foremost for people, it's cash to improve one's financial life. And the rest of this episode is designed with that in mind. However, some people create a side hustle as an outlet for their passion that's not getting fulfilled at work or in their personal life. For example, maybe someone loves to write and they're not getting enough of an opportunity to do that in their full-time job. And they look to a side hustle as a copywriter, for example, to fill that need. The third popular reason for someone wanting to start a side hustle is to test a possible career move. A recent guest on the show was telling me that a friend of hers is a lawyer, but really wants to quit being a lawyer and instead be baking and selling croissants. How's that for a pivot? Regardless of your motivation, it's got to be worth it to you in some way or another. What's motivating you? Tip number 1, hustler, know thyself. According to ancient Greek and Roman authors, prominently inscribed upon the temple of Apollo at Delphi were the words, know thyself. Good advice. For our context, that means know what's a good fit for your personality. In my book, The Way Success Works, How to Decide, Believe, and Begin to Live Your Best Life, there's a section on designing your life through 4 primary questions. One of those questions is to describe your perfect workday. Does your perfect workday consist of a blend of what you're doing now full-time, as well as running your side hustle? Or do you see yourself building up your side venture to the point where it becomes your full-time? Or maybe your goal is financial freedom. I define that as when your passive income exceeds your expenses. Then you're working because you want to, not because you have to. That's a beautiful place to be. In my very early 20s, I set a goal to become a bank manager. I honestly thought that if I could achieve that, my life would be made. I mean, what more could I possibly want? Turns out, a whole lot more. Well, after receiving that appointment at the age of 22 and working on it for a couple of years, I realized that wasn't it. That's not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. The problem was I didn't know what I did want to do. But by then, I knew and had witnessed the power of visualization, of building and holding an image in my mind of what I wanted. But I felt stuck because I didn't know what the image was to build and hold. So I figured the least I could do was define the parameters of what I liked. So that's what I did. As it turned out, answering the following questions was a huge help in enabling me to move in at least the direction that I wanted to go, even if I wasn't clear on what the final destination really was. This exercise led me to what ended up being a lifelong career in personal development as a speaker and trainer and eventually author. So I pose these questions to you for you to think about your preferences to help you choose your perfect side hustle. Do you see yourself working predominantly on your own or with a group? Are you working at home or at a coffee shop or more in a group environment? Are you working indoors or outdoors? Are you traveling a lot or staying mostly in one place? If you're traveling, where are you? If you haven't yet decided on a side hustle, once you've determined your preferences through these questions, plug them into an AI platform. In ChatGPT, I asked, What would be a good side hustle for me if I like to be outdoors, mostly on my own, and working with my hands? I thought I would challenge it with something a little bit different than online side hustles. It actually came up with some pretty great responses that would be a good fit. Things like landscaping and gardening services. And if you happen to have listened to episode 77, Massive Markups for Mega Profits, you know how lucrative that side hustle can be. For this profile, ChatGPT also suggested outdoor photography, firewood sales, which I thought was pretty creative, outdoor fitness training. People are into that. Dog walking, pet sitting, something we explored in episode 73 entitled Paws, Profits, and Tales of Pet Sitting. Also on the list was camping equipment rental, starting a business renting out camping equipment such as tents, sleeping bags, cooking gear. Bicycle repair and maintenance can be very lucrative. Wildlife guide. I've done a couple of recent episodes with tour guides and tour organizers, and it listed canoe kayak rental. I was laughing at that one because in a very recent episode, I explained that when I had a business selling kayaks, I would have loved for someone to come along and propose a deal where they would run a kayak tour and kayak lessons from my location and pay me X amount of dollars for the rental of the boats. It would have been a real win win. At any rate, my point is once you decide the parameters of what would be a good fit for you, plug in those guidelines to an AI platform and see what comes up. You might find a great fit. Then you can research the feasibility of it from there. Let me know how the search goes. As you've likely discovered, there's some great resources out there giving you ideas for a huge variety of side hustles that you can start. But in my 30 plus years of studying the mind and human potential, my experience has taught me, the side hustle heroes have told me, and what I've seen time and time again is there is no shortage of ideas. What is lacking is execution, taking action. That's why I inject personal development pieces here and there to hopefully increase the appreciation that you should have for your inner resources that you've yet to tap. As Gina Scarpa said in episode 35, the only person stopping you is you. So after you've chosen your side hustle, you'll want to do some market research. That's tip number 2. Do your market research. Is there actually a demand for what you want to do? If the demand is there, how are you going to differentiate yourself? How are you going to stand out from the crowd? That may take you some time to develop, which is fine, but you'll need to give it some thought. Back in my banking days, I bought a delicatessen as a side hustle. We faced a lot of competition, but I decided early on that I didn't want to compete on price. Instead, I differentiated by seeking out unique suppliers and gaining an exclusive so that I was the only one in town selling their product. How will you differentiate? It could be a unique element or set of experiences and expertise that you bring to the table. Tip number 3. Number 3 is to set 2 types of goals. The first goal is going to be your big dream, the ultimate. That's the big picture, major goal. The second type is a goal of a shorter term. If you're contemplating starting a side hustle, it could be setting a launch date and what that launch will look like. In addition, I'd suggest setting a 1-year goal with quarterly goals baked in. Even though it's a side hustle, you'll want to run it like a business. The reason for gaining clarity on the big dream is that you may have an idea of how you might get there, but there's a really good chance that how it plays out will be quite different. And you want to be flexible, open to the possibility of different paths to get to your objective. There will be twists and turns, and sometimes when something happens, we're quick to judge it as negative because it isn't in sync with our shorter term goal. But maybe it's exactly what needed to happen to get you to where you ultimately want to go. One of my favorite quotes is by Stephen Jobs when he said, "You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. You have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future." When something happens that we're quick to judge as not right or negative, recognize that we have a limited awareness in the moment. Maybe there's a silver lining. Have you ever been in a situation where when something happened, you saw it as negative, but then time passed and looking back now, you see the benefit that was wrapped up in it. So much so that now you might even say, I'm glad that happened because it led me to do this new thing or carve this new path. Does that happen to you? That's quite common. So work towards your shorter term goals, but keep the big picture goal in mind too. Next up, we get into the number crunching. My apologies to you right brain creatives out there, but you need to hear this. Number 4 is to create a budget. You'll want to do some number crunching to figure out what this is going to cost you to launch and to run every month. And you'll also want to consider what you need to spend to bring your skills and knowledge up to speed. For example, one thing I desperately needed when I started this podcast and still do today was more knowledge of social media and podcasting in general. I was able to find some cost effective courses on Udemy that were a good fit. But then, of course, since everything is subscriptions these days, you want to consider what you'll need to run your business. It's great that some platforms offer free plans, which, if you can make those work, definitely go for it if you're not really needing the added bells and whistles of the paid subscriptions. In the past, I've put together my own websites, but for the podcast, I came across a platform called Page, where their backend software does most of the work. It's pretty slick, and it freed me up to focus on other elements of the podcast, so it's been well worth the cost. Similarly, Libsyn is where the episodes are uploaded, and they distribute to a huge list of podcast platforms, so they make distribution easy. So I need to take into account all the recurring monthly expenses as well as annual costs. So nail down your startup costs, your operating costs, and how you're going to pay for that. And of course, that involves sales forecasts. All this talk of number crunching leads me to tip number 5, bootstrapping. Be smart with your spending. If you don't have to spend money on it, don't. One of our side hustle heroes is Melissa Mills, founder of Spread'em, episode 67. Her company makes dips out of cashews. It tastes like cream cheese, but there's no dairy. She's grown from producing them from her home to a commissary kitchen to a 20,000 square foot facility. A commissary kitchen is where a business owner rents space in a commercial kitchen facility to cook up their product, and they pay a monthly fee. I asked Melissa what she saw as mistakes other people in the commissary made that put them out of business. You know, the ones that didn't last. She said she was amazed at the poor spending decisions some people made, like buying a new vehicle. Or she talked about boxes. She said new boxes are expensive. For the longest time, she scrambled to get used ones for cheap. She said, I always tried to get things free whenever I could. However, she never compromised or scrimped on ingredients. But when it came to, say, packaging materials, example like boxes, she was more than happy to use someone else's used once boxes. Number 6, manage activities, not time. Because regardless of who we are or where we live, there are 1,440 minutes in every day. Both the most productive, goal achieving person in the world and any person who doesn't accomplish much at all are gifted with exactly the same amount. It's how you approach those minutes that'll determine how effective you are during the day without overloading or overwhelming yourself. But here's the thing. When you hear what I'm going to be sharing with you in a moment, you may think, oh, yeah, I know that. That's a great idea. And if you hear yourself saying that, then ask yourself, am I doing it? Is it truly part of your day? Because there's a huge difference between knowing and doing. We can know a lot of things. We can have a highly developed intellect. But if we don't step out and act on those ideas that we feel are going to help us, we're not going to get the results that we want in life and that we're truly capable of achieving. I was one of those people who, for a long time, knew of this hack, but didn't use it much, certainly not consistently, until one day it just clicked. And I thought, damn it, I know this is a great idea. When I've used it in the past, I've had awesome days. So I'm going to start using it consistently. And I was shocked at how much more important work I actually got done in a day, which of course improved my results. And I felt so much better at the end of the day. So, drum roll, please. And here it is. It's a 3-step process. Step 1, the last task of your day is to create your to-do list for the next day. Maybe in the future, I'll do an episode on building your calendar, but a key component of your to do list will be tasks that move you closer to achieving your goals. If those tasks aren't a priority or you haven't gained clarity on what those tasks are, you're wasting your time. So create your list for the next day. Step two, prioritize the tasks. Out of everything you wrote down, what's the most important that needs your attention? Not the easiest, not the quickest to do, but what's the most important? If you say, but they're all important. Yeah, I get that. But what's the most important? What's number one? What's number two? Then number three, et cetera, until you've gone down the list. And then finally, step three. The next day, you look at your list and hone in on number one. Work away on that one. And do not go to number two until you finish number one. Will there be emergencies come up that you have to deal with? Sure. It's called life. Will you get interrupted? Yep. Even sometimes when you've set aside time for your deep work, a call might come through that you deem to be really important that you've been waiting for days. Chances are you're going to jump on that call. Well, here's another benefit. After that call, after the interruption, you can jump back into where you were quicker and easier because you know what you need to do. It's laid out in front of you. So once you've completed number one, then and only then do you go on to number two. And even if you don't go through your entire to-do list in a day, you know that you've accomplished the most important things. And that, my friend, feels pretty darn awesome, right? Without prioritizing, oftentimes what happens is that the very task that needs to be done the most, that'll yield the greatest result for you, often keeps getting put off because there's something you doubt or fear about it, or you just don't want to do it. Prioritizing and then making the commitment and following through will ensure the most important work gets done first. Some people teach to write down and prioritize only the top three tasks. I tried that and it works okay, but for me, I found most productive when I prioritize all my to dos for the day. Let me know what works best for you. This brings us to number 7. And this one is huge. It's probably the most common messaging among the side hustle hero guests on this show. And it is take action. I know that sounds obvious, but it's so easy to spend time down the rabbit hole of researching and studying and debating. And while a certain amount of that is valuable and necessary, it can morph into a defense measure, preventing us from taking action. Because maybe there's some fear holding us back, fear of failure, fear of what other people may think. But at some point soon, you've got to bust through what I call the terror barrier and act. You will not receive any side hustle benefit without the action piece. All the research in the world isn't going to generate for you a single drop of money. So as Annalisa DeMarta, the Amazon sales superstar from episode 65 explains, risk a little, learn a lot. Once you execute, that'll generate a result. It'll be a success or a learning experience. If it's a success, great, keep going. If things didn't go well, it's a learning experience. What did you learn? What will you do differently in the future? What do you do differently next? You're collecting valuable data that adds to your wisdom about your side hustle and increases your chance of future success. Number 8, seek out pro advice. The value of this can't be underestimated. Seek out people who are excelling at what you want to do, but make sure you verify that they are indeed achieving or have achieved the results that you want. I'm looking at you, social media. I shake my head at some of these TikTok videos and Instagram posts. In the vast majority of cases, the success you seek is going to take time, sweat equity, pivoting. It doesn't happen overnight, despite what the ads and the webinars say. But getting back to pro advice and mentors, I am so thankful for the people I've met who have expertise in the fields that I've jumped into. When I first started to learn about self-storage, I felt it was a perfect fit for me for so many reasons, but I knew little about it. So I built the image in my mind of wanting to be an owner of a facility. And not that long afterwards, I was at a party where I met a friend of a friend of a friend who introduced me to someone who was there, and he owned a portfolio of self-storage properties in a couple of major cities. He became my mentor. And I think it was because of his belief in me, and certainly his knowledge of the industry, it caused me to step out of my comfort zone in a huge way and purchase a facility. And I'm so glad I did. I owned it for 18 years. Then, when I started the Side Hustle Hero podcast, I found and reached out to two podcasters in particular who were operating at the level to which I was aspiring to get their feedback as to what it took to get there and what I needed to do as first steps. One of the questions I love to ask people in a situation like that is, what was your biggest surprise after you got into the business? What's something you didn't anticipate? That's often led to a conversation about an element of the business that I didn't even think to ask about. Will everyone you ask say yes when you ask for their advice? No, but that's okay. Just ask someone else with the same credentials or similar. I learned many years ago a four-letter word to handle all rejection, and that word is next. Just go to the next person. It's been my experience that most people do want to share their expertise and their knowledge, but you do have to ask. Tip number 9 in our top 10 tips for side hustle success. Number 9 is give it time. Avoid shiny object syndrome. Social media posts make it sound so easy to launch and run a successful side hustle. Just get involved in this online business or flipping these pallets of merchandise or whatever is the side hustle of the week. But the reality is, it takes work, it takes effort, it takes time. As I researched all things podcasting, I discovered that the majority of podcasts that start only last about 8 or 9 episodes and then they're gone. And now I'm told this year that that's even a smaller number of episodes. Knowing that before I launched, I committed to myself that I would do this regardless of the challenges I faced, that I would do it for a full year. And after that year, I would give myself the option of reviewing things and deciding whether I wanted to continue or not. I'm thrilled to say that we're well into year 2. But I'll admit, had I not made that commitment to myself, I may have bailed at some point in year 1. Because regardless of the side hustle you embark on, there are going to be times where you question your decision. You find that maybe it's taking more time than you anticipated. Maybe you're not getting the results that you thought you would by this point in time. And it's easy to abandon the dream. At some point, I should do an episode on accountability partners because that's something that has contributed to every major success in my life, whether that's my book being completed and becoming a bestseller, or the launching of my online course, or this podcast. I've had an accountability partner that I've had to answer to. That external push from someone you respect and you don't want to disappoint is so helpful. Because in order for us to get a different result, we have to do things differently. And typically, that pushes us out of our comfort zone into what I call the panic zone. And it's just too easy to scurry back into the comfort zone and justify going back to our old results, saying, I don't want a side hustle anyway. Well, that was a stupid idea. Instead, stick with me in this podcast and I'll help you through the panic zone. And as I've mentioned before, actually at the end of pretty much every episode, I say, feel free to reach out to me at any time. And last, but certainly not least, this one's going to sound a bit cliche, but it is truly important, and that is celebrate your successes. I recognize you could be in a time crunch between your full-time work and launching or running a side hustle, and you're thinking, I don't have time to celebrate. Seriously, take the time. At least take a moment to acknowledge in yourself the feeling of success. Really feel what that feels like. Be proud of what you've accomplished because it's going to help invigorate you. It'll up your commitment. Because let's face it, regardless of the side hustle that you've chosen, there will be challenges, there will be setbacks, and you need to take a moment in time to acknowledge the successes. For example, a huge success is your actual launch. So many people talk about what they want to do, but if you've actually hit the send button or upload or whatever it looks like for you, that's a win. You're on your way. And I hope you'll continue to journey with me and our side hustle heroes as we provide inspiration, encouragement, and ideas to help you realize your side hustle goals. You truly have deep reservoirs of talent and ability within you that have yet to be expressed, that you haven't even yet seen. So often, it's only when you're really pressed, when your back is up against the wall, that your talent and potential really emerges and shines. And you might even amaze yourself. Don't underestimate your abilities. I encourage you to study the mind and human potential even a little bit every day. And as you do, you'll begin to gain more appreciation of what you're truly capable. I'm so excited about this journey we're taking into the side hustle world in 2024. Thanks for joining me. Well, that's a wrap for today. If you'd like to hear any of the episodes mentioned, you'll find the full show notes with links at sidehustlehero.com. There you can also explore the archives. And you'll also find a link to my flagship video course, How to Turn Your Thoughts into Wanted Things. Because results, things are constantly showing up in your life. But are they what you really want? If you're enjoying what you're seeing in this podcast, I'd be so grateful if you would take a moment and add your comment, share the episode, and please subscribe. It'll let others know that there's valuable content here to help them start or grow their side hustle. Thanks for watching, and hustle on.